Okay, so today we're going deep on, well, kind of a dark figure,
Yeah.
Satan,
Yep.
and what the Bible actually has to say about him.
Yeah.
People have a lot of ideas, preconceived notions,
For sure.
but we're going to go straight to the source here, to the Bible,
To the verses.
to the verses,
Absolutely.
and see what we can learn about him, and it's pretty interesting.
Well, one of the most interesting things about this is that the Bible doesn't give us,
Right.
a Satan biography.
Like a full backstory.
Yeah, like Satan, the early years, none of that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more like we get these glimpses and these hints.
Like these clues. Yeah.
Through stories and passages and things like that.
Right, so it's almost like we're putting together these puzzle pieces.
Exactly.
To kind of see what is the picture of this guy.
Yeah.
And one of the first clues I guess we could look at is in Isaiah 14.1 to 15.
Yes, good one.
Where, it talks about this fall from heaven. The big fall, and it uses this name Lucifer.
Right, and a lot of people interpret that name Lucifer as pre-fall Satan.
Oh, interesting.
Pre-rebellion, and the imagery in that passage it's wild, talking about a morning star falling from the sky.
Yeah, so it really paints this picture of a powerful being.
What's glorious.
Yeah, and then
it's beautiful.
Yeah, and then for some reason decides to rebel.
Right, and I think that raises a lot of questions for people too.
Yeah.
Like why would an angel rebel against God?
What's the motivation?
Yeah, what was going through his mind, What was his goal? And that's where, really getting into the text and looking at different interpretations and different scholars can be really helpful.
Yeah, and there's actually, I was reading, there's actually some debate about whether Lucifer is definitively Satan in that passage.
Right.
It's really interesting.
But the themes of, pride and rebellion definitely seem to fit.
Yeah, definitely fit with what we see of Satan later on.
Yeah.
So we have this being cast out of heaven. Okay, what does he do next? We see in other verses, like Job 1:2 and Zechariah 3.12, he's called the adversary.
Right. Which is
it's almost like a title.
It is a title, yeah.
The adversary.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, if you look at the story of Job, it's a pretty powerful example.
Right.
Satan basically goes to God and says, hey, can I test this guy Job?
Yeah.
And God's like, all right, within these limits, see what you can do.
Which is a weird concept, right?
Right. I mean, it raises all kinds of theological questions about free will and divine sovereignty and all these things. But
that's like a cosmic chess game.
It is, yeah.
With this poor guy Job caught in the middle.
And you really get the sense there of Satan's role as a tempter, as somebody who's always trying to, poke and prod and see where he can challenge humanity's, goodness. And, he's always there to accuse, before God.
And it almost makes me wonder, how much is, we talk about free will.
Right.
How much is us actually making choices?
Right.
And how much is this kind of divine plan playing out?
Yeah. And that's one of the big
pawns in this battle.
That's one of the big debates that comes out of this, right?
Absolutely.
But the Bible does make it pretty clear that Satan has, some power, some limited power.
Right.
But it's always under God's
authority.
Authority, exactly.
So we have him as this adversary, this tempter.
Right.
And then, of course, we can't forget the Garden of Eden.
Oh, yeah.
Genesis 3.1 to 5, we have this serpent that's, tempting Eve.
Right, and that's classically interpreted as...
And that's also interpreted as Satan.
Satan in disguise.
Yeah, and so it's not like he's shown up with, horns and a pitchfork.
No, yeah.
It's very subtle.
It's deception.
Right.
He's twisting the truth.
Yeah, taking advantage of weaknesses.
Exactly.
And desires. And, I mean, it makes me think about, how many times have I...
Right, in your own life?
In my own life, been tempted to do something
right.
I knew wasn't right, but it seemed appealing at the time.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've all been there.
And I'm like, why am I even considering this?
Right.
But there's this pull.
Yeah, there's that pull.
And I think that's what the Bible's talking about when it talks about spiritual warfare.
It is, exactly.
Like in Ephesians 6.111, 1 Peter 5.8, it's like...
Yeah, and I think those verses suggest that this is, an ongoing battle.
So it's not just individual.
It's not just about me trying to decide whether I'm going to, eat the extra cookie or whatever.
Right.
It's a bigger cosmic battle between...
good and evil.
good and evil, and we need to be aware
Right.
of Satan's schemes and how he tries to influence us
And what the weapons are.
Right. It
Talks about how do we actually fight back.
Yeah, the armor of God.
Right.
Right. It's like putting on that spiritual armor.
Yeah. I mean, and we could go deep on that.
We could, yeah.
But I think the thing that's really interesting about, studying Satan and thinking about all this
Right.
is that, he seems so powerful.
He does.
But ultimately, the Bible points to his defeat.
His defeat, yeah.
And Revelation has a lot to say about that.
It does. It's very apocalyptic.
Yeah. Revelation
Revelation 12.910, 20.10.
Right.
Talks about Satan being cast down, ultimately judged by God.
And there's a lot of symbolism in Revelation.
Oh, tons.
But the message is clear. Good triumphs over evil in the end.
Yeah, in the end, it's a message of hope.
It's very hopeful.
Yeah, amidst all the struggle and amidst all the darkness that we see.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, right?
It does.
Because if Satan really is a master of disguise,
Interesting.
how is he working in the world today?
Right.
Are there things that we're
not even recognizing.
That we're just completely blind to?
Right.
Because we think, oh, this is just, progress.
Or this is just human nature or whatever.
This is just human nature. Yeah, I think that's something worth thinking about.
Pondering.
So I think just to recap, we've seen, Satan's fall.
The fall.
His role as a tempter.
A tempter.
This constant, spiritual warfare that's going on.
The battle.
And ultimately his defeat.
The defeat.
And these are just some of the key points from the Bible. There's
so much more.
So much more we could dive into.
We could go on and on.
But I think this gives us a good foundation.
Yeah, it does.
And for anyone listening, as you keep learning and exploring,
right,
maybe ask yourself, if Satan's really this master of disguise, how might he be working in our world today?
Good question.
Something to ponder. And thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.